Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com on this July 28th, 2015 day on our calendar. Again, this is the Investigative Journal. You can listen to my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com, and that's Pacific time. Now, this is part 11 of In Search of the Great Ice Wall, and what we're doing is trying to show you that perhaps NASA is a big hoax. Now, the reason I say that is because I have serious doubts, and I began to think about this seriously back when I was doing a whole bunch of stories about, this is years ago, regarding the fake moon landings. And at that particular juncture, I figured, well, maybe they can put this hoax across on the people, but basically the Earth has to be a globe. Well, little did I find out that over the years, when you start really understanding what they do, the whole thing is a hoax. And there's so much solid information, if you just open your mind a bit, to understand that we really have to start looking at what we live on. Has NASA given us the biggest hoax in the world, and that is that we live on a globe when actually it's a plane. And there is so much solid evidence showing that that's what these shows are about. So go back to some of the old ones. And what I've done is I've tried to limit it to just basically what the size and shape of the Earth that you walk on is like. I don't want to discuss outer space yet, although today we're going to look at some of NASA's biggest hoaxes and how they do it. And you're going to have to use your imagination because you can't see the pictures. Go to the web, though. You can Google anything these days, and you can find out, if you really want to look at things, what's really going on behind the scenes. So I thought I'd play this little intro done by a man by the name of Crow, who has some doubts about NASA. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Funny thing that goes on here. If you asked people in the United States, do you trust your government? I doubt you would have very few that said yes at this point. And yet what NASA is in fact a government agency, but somehow they get a pass. They have pretty pictures and these fantastic missions and one thing after another where people who distrust their government think NASA is good to go. And you can't separate those two things. NASA is a government entity, and as a matter of fact, it has become a bad word. I recently looked at a satellite company, and many of the people working for it claimed all this aerospace industry experience, and it was clear that over the last 40 years, one of the main places you had to do that was NASA.
Well, anyway, let me just add that perhaps this gentleman hasn't done research on the satellites. They're a suspect as well. I really have found out information that there's not one satellite up there. Interesting.
But none of them would say the word NASA because it has become a bad word for thinking individuals. Even some of the people on these resumes stated they worked with Wernher von Braun in the Apollo mission and still would not say the word NASA in their resume. When you consider the moon landings and really consider them and just stop accepting that I want to believe these things are true and go out and actually do a detailed analysis, what you find is that what you've been presented with was not what you were told it was. It's that simple. I would also mention that recently National Geographic, which is probably one of the last magazines with major world circulation, I don't know about that, but I know that it does have good circulation still, comparatively, ran a cover story where the people who doubt the moon landing were featured prominently and belittled on the cover. That is a telling thing. That means something. To do the effort to put that on a cover of a magazine like National Geographic has a bearing. It has a meaning. There is a reason for these things, and it also demonstrates so many people are no longer accepting just any old thing NASA wants to tell us. On top of that, either naming space objects is a serious endeavor. Either words have meaning and there is an importance here, or they don't. And yet what we find in the demotion of Pluto from a planet to a, quote, dwarf planet, and there's a whole litany of things behind that you could cover, There are a couple Kuiper Belt objects, we are told, that were bigger, which helped demote it, among other things. But two of those objects, get this, two of those objects were named Easter Bunny and Santa. Either words have meaning or they do not. Those are fantasies. Those are non-reality entities being named after supposed real space objects, and either words mean something or they don't. And if you cannot get beyond the gross appearance of what is going on and subtly understand what is going on, you will not accept that, oh, this was shot near Easter, or we were in the happy holidays near Christmas. That's hogwash. Either this is serious business or it is not. And in my view, you want to go around naming things Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, you're doing it for kids or you're laughing at adults. I don't know which, but it is not a serious endeavor in my mind. And Hollywood is never far behind NASA. Even on the current Pluto mission, two of the pieces of equipment are named after the honeymooners, straight out of Burbank, California. You know, Ralph and Alice. There's footage, recent footage of some supposed astronaut on the ISS, you know, Skyping, I guess, with Susan Sarandon. Hollywood is ever present.
Yes, they are. They're ever present. And, for example, this hoax that that is now being thrust upon us, this so-called Pluto mission. Before we go any farther, let me talk to you a little bit about that. What is the Pluto mission? Well, Pluto, in my estimation, really doesn't exist. And you can look at, they give you now pictures of Pluto. Now, it just so happens that the one picture they give you was an artist's rendition of a picture that was done in 1979. Now, how could that be? It's a hoax. Pluto does not exist. They didn't go. There's no pictures of Pluto. And the question I ask is, if there's so many pictures of Pluto, they even tell us some things about this. There's water and ice on Pluto. Why can't we get good pictures of the Earth? We're still using that one, the picture they gave us in the 70s. They don't. If there's so many satellites up there, how come we don't get really detailed pictures of what this globe really looks like? Because it isn't a globe. And they're hiding it. And when you understand, let's just talk about this Pluto mission that they're pushing on the air. You hear it on every newscast, on the weather channels, all this garbage. The mission is called New Horizons, and that has significant occult meaning. Now, Pluto, remember, I think the first time they decided to discover this and make it another hoax was back, I think, in 1930. And that's when also Hollywood came up with Pluto, Disney came up with Pluto the dog. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Now, in mythology, Pluto was the lord of death in the underworld in Roman mythology, a role filled by Osiris, the green man in Egyptian mythology. Now, we already discussed Osiris and Isis and the significance of the Washington Monument, the obelisk in Rome, the obelisk in Washington, which is the Washington Monument, the obelisk in London, the three major cities, this triumvirate of evil, and the symbols they use for what we call freedom here, what Rome calls, or the Vatican calls, Christianity, is this obelisk, which is a representation of, we talked about Isis and the penis of Osiris and this occult representation. And go back and check out Isis, the story of Isis, and then think about why would this huge terror group now be named ISIS? Because they named it that. And it is a homage to Osiris. Now, so is this Pluto. This is a New Horizons. This is the mission. Now, the Empire State Building is arguably also a Masonic landmark. It's on the corner of 33rd and 5th, the five-pointed star being sacred to Masons. Osiris leading, let's look at this. We already discussed in many shows was Isis, but we now find that Pluto has water ice on it, they tell us. And Osiris was represented by water in all its forms. NASA openly reveres Osiris is blatantly obvious. if you understand the occult. Now, the mission is called New Horizons, is another double entendre, in that the root word of horizon in the Greek is Horus. And in his most important incarnation, Horus was formerly known as, it's spelled Horakathy, or Horus of the Two Horizons. Now, there was another strange detail in this mission, this fake mission, one that also ties directly back to Horus. A picture taken from Pluto showed this heart shape, which will remind our readers, at least people who listen to this show, of the identical image in the movie Hancock, in which superhero Will Smith creates a red heart on the moon for Jason Bateman's character Ray. Yeah, this is interesting, because Hollywood and NASA are tied together. So there's a very, very interesting occult significance to this fake Pluto mission that we're watching right now before our very eyes being thrust upon us. So let's go back again to Crow here. He calls himself Crow 777. And see what he has to say.
We have the famous Mr. Masamoto, or whatever his name is, that shows up on Big Bang all the time. If you remember back to the moon launches, you had to be an Iron Man, the best of the best, to go to the moon. On Big Bang now, you can be a small Jewish boy that can't even run or do anything physical, no problem. You're going up to space. And you kind of see these constructs built over and over again. But in this country, actually probably a lot of the world, we are kind of trained to recognize only gross things. Very few of us pick up subtlety and detail, which is critical at this point when you are looking at these constructs that are being handed to you. There are really no images that are expected snapshots out of a camera from space, and most of the descriptions under those images tell you just that. It's a telemetry, it's a construct, it's a mosaic, it's some kind of created image, which is true of the Apollo 17 image we are told is the world from space, which in fact is not a snapshot of our planet from space. It just isn't. It's that simple. And so, as we look at the Pluto mission, and a lot of people had a problem with the camera, well, let me tell you something. Going to space in a place you've never been, making the world wait 9 years for you to get there, and taking a 1 megapixel camera is patently ridiculous. You know, I looked up the first earliest digital cameras, and the first one out, I've posted it, I think it was Nikon, don't call me on it, it's one of those, had 1.3 megapixels. So what we are saying is that 9 years ago, NASA set out on a mission with a single megapixel, which is less than the first consumer-grade digital camera. Really? That's acceptable. If that's acceptable to you, then this conversation probably won't go anywhere.
Well, this conversation, and a lot what I say, doesn't go far. I mean, there are people that will buy this, and more and more people are getting to understand that this great deception goes very deep. Now, for example, I don't believe we've ever been in space, and I believe it's all been a hoax, and I don't think we really know what's up there yet. And I think you got to start thinking in those terms, and what I've tried to do with these shows is show you what's on this earth, how we can use our common sense, based on horizons, mathematics, simple math that NASA gives us, that the curvature doesn't exist. And when you start looking at the pictures, the eye level of the horizon, no matter how high you go up, or whether you're, like I always, the first time I started thinking in these terms of common sense was when I would scuba dive off the La Jolla shores, and it's a very flat area, and my goggles would be, even with the water as I was floating out, and I would look miles and miles, and I would go, God, if there's a horizon, I should be able to see some kind of curve. There's got to be. Why should I be able to see that boat the way I do? It shouldn't even be in my eyesight. But then again, we believe these experts, and together with Hollywood and all of their craziness, together with the government, they work hand in hand to create a false reality. I think that's what he's saying. And I want to get into why I've decided to talk a lot about the possibility that we do not live on a globe. And I'll get to that today because it's important. I can do that in 4 or 5 minutes. But let me finish this really quick in this first half hour.
But for a critical thinking individual, you might consider that we're going to take 9 years, according to NASA, to get to a planet that we have never seen up close, and the quality of the imagery is not that important. And I'll tell you why it's not that important. Because what's going to happen is they're going to give you these low-quality images, which I've kind of already showed, and lower your expectation, and then the graphic designers are going to go to work and show what they call their high-def, high-resolution images, which they're all called that, by the way, most of them. And it's a shell game. That is all it is. And while I don't think I'm going to take the 5 hours out of my day to really dig into all the Masonic coding of numbers and all the fakery that is visible in every single NASA mission, I will point you to the comment clip that I put up, and I will post that down in the description if you care. That is one where I spent about 5 or 6 hours doing the research, getting the images, and demonstrating the coded fraud that is being flaunted in your face. And to top it off, for people who are so used to only recognizing gross things and little detail, it's almost irony that we all know that Pluto the cartoon character was born in 1930 and Pluto the planet was found in 1930. And on top of that, I think she was 11 years old, not sure, don't remember, but some very young girl was responsible for the naming of that and claimed it had nothing to do with Disney. And you're looking at Disney, the 33rd degree Mason. You're looking at every astronaut is a Mason. You're looking at the founders of NASA being Masons. And while I don't like to say that, because I don't think we should just bag on Masons indiscriminately. The average person who is a Mason is probably just a guy that's a member of a lodge raising a family. But there is absolutely a higher level to this, which is not up to anything positive for the average person. I would say, if you want to critically look at what NASA is presenting us and look at the details and throw out your preconceived conceptions of what NASA is, or throw out that you really want it to be true and you want all this space travel, these fantastic things to be reality, what you will find is something altogether different. And I don't know what more to say about it without sitting down to doing the 5 or 6 hour clip that has all the research, like I did with the Philae Comet mission. But I will post that one down, which is just another prime example of NASA fraud. Okay, to wrap this up in a way that most people should be able to understand, here's a Hubble image of Pluto on the right up there. There's a ground-based scope on the left. This was released the 4th of October in 1990. I couldn't even find it in a search engine, any of the older images, until I forced the date back because the new stuff has plugged everything up. So this is the kind of, finally when we had the Hubble, the biggest and best telescope we've got, this is...
Now I might add, there is no such thing as the Hubble telescope, but this is what they told us back in 90, and when you see this, you'll start getting it.
What we knew of Pluto. And I know this to be true. The first time I looked at Pluto through my telescope was in the 90s. It is the dimmest, faintest looking star you will ever see.
And maybe that's really all it is. It's a star. And when you start measuring, they're not the distance that NASA tells us.
But there is a twist. Another, quote, coincidence. Here's the recent New Horizons July 7, 2015 image on the left. And here is a painting done of Pluto by Don Dixon in 1979.
Now, you can't see this, of course, as on a radio show. But what I'm looking at, and you can go to Crow's, Google it, and you can see the same image from Pluto's New Horizons mission, which is, of course, an occult significance. Their picture they're showing us now, it's a perfect globe again. I mean, this is amazing to me, how people will believe this. And when you look at the painting that this guy did Don Dixon did a painting of Pluto in 1979. it's remarkably similar and the same. I mean, come on. How could he had no idea what that looked like. Now, I'm saying both of these things are a fraud. And this is an example of how they imprint this stuff as true in your mind when it is completely Hollywood. Let's just say it's better than a Hollywood movie.
And boy, the guy must have psychic abilities. So here is kind of the game that you see going on with NASA nonstop. If you're a person that believes in coincidences, maybe you can write this off. I do not. And this is not the first kind of time this type of thing has happened. How in the heck, with an infinite possible amount of ways this planet could have looked, could an artist in 1979 have come so close when basically the only images we had were a very faint, dim white dot? This is all the way back in the 70s.
Yeah, and that I'm going to end it there. And that's the end of what Crow was saying on this. But go to some of his website. Come see, he's done some nice research on this, and you'll find there are people out there trying to. I guess it's the curiosity in a human being that makes us want to figure this stuff out. I mean, it does nothing for our pocketbooks, does it? But NASA seems to pad their pocketbooks a lot with lies. So perhaps the idea is if you get into this fantasy world along with them, you can make a lot of money. But when you start delving into the hypocrisy, the truth behind this, and the occult significance, it all comes back to Rome. And when we start figuring this, it's such a interesting discussion. When you start talking about Rome's and the Jesuit order's obsession with astronomy now. They have the largest telescope in America on Mount Graham in Arizona. They're constantly, when you go to Rome, they have this big, huge observatory, and when they thought the world was, remember, they at the beginning thought it was a plane. Well, they knew what it was, and they know it is today. But the hypocrisy and the money waste, I mean, come on. And then we're going to listen to the Pope when he comes here September 23rd. Another, it all goes to the question of how much are you going out? What's the deception? They've deceived us about the shape of this planet. Well, I call it a plane or a circle. And they've deceived us about what about the Vatican and their Mother Mary apparitions? What about the deceptions that he's actually God on earth? I mean, this is ridiculous. All of it plays together. And when you start thinking in those terms, I've been researching stuff like this in all areas for years. And in the second half hour, before I show you some more things about the NASA hoax, which you can't see, but you're gonna get the idea, because we're going to go to a swimming pool and show you how they do the spacewalks and all that stuff, just for kicks. But I'm gonna open the next half hour with really explaining why I'm doing this and what really truth movements are all about and what we can accomplish with them. Now, can we accomplish anything? Is there a possibility of turning this world upside down and us living in a truthful environment, understanding and using money in the proper way? Is there a way that this can happen on a basis with not only just in your own mind, but can reality actually win over fantasy? Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased. It has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on this July 28th, 2015, Part 11 of In Search of the Great Ice Wall, trying to show you that the surface that you live on is not a globe, but is actually a plane, and there's solid evidence showing, in fact, better evidence than NASA gives you with all their billions of dollars. Now, the question becomes, why have I been spending so much time doing this? I believe it's the greatest deception of all. Not that the other ones aren't important, 9/11, etc. But this one really makes you start wondering and gets you really closer to the truth about this occult world we live in and this fantasy world we live in and who's involved in it. And for me, it's been a long road to get to this point. And let me explain to you that I'm not doing this with any kind of hope that things will get better, with any kind of hope that I will amass a large audience and spread this whole message around the world. I have no intention of doing that. This is just one person's journey, and if it stops with me, that's fine. But I have no intention of misleading you. I have no intentions of wanting you to believe me. I have no intentions of thinking that anything anymore of what we do in any kind of truth movement will make this world a better place. It is just not going to happen. And that's the sad but happy result of many years of investigation. Now, I haven't always felt that way. And I would say for a majority of my life, I felt completely different. I felt that each truth movement could bring about a better world. If we bring it all together and get more people, we could change this evil that's going on. But what I've realized over the years is no, it's never going to change. It's only going to get worse. And although you may call me a pessimist, I think it's more of a realist. Now, let me go back and explain why I came to that conclusion. Now, I grew up in America just like all of you Americans, growing up believing the same things, never questioning, believing we are a special group living in this beautiful country. In fact, I grew up thinking I was even better than best because I grew up in the biggest religion in the world. I was special. That's the way I grew up. That's what they told me. And that's what I believed. And throughout the years, I lived a normal life. Yes, just like anybody else. High school, athletics, going to college, wondering what the heck I'm going to do with my life, going through periods of time of wondering. Boy, I gotta. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. But anyway, excuse me, I don't have one of those sneeze buttons here like they do on real radio. But anyway, boy, something's in the air here. And anyway, should I continue? Yeah. Why not? You might as well listen to all the sneezing. You won't catch anything over the air. But anyway, so must be something in the air. But anyway, back to, I feel a little better now. Back to what I was getting at. So as I decided to make a decision after college, I was torn between a couple things. Now, you might think this is kind of, I look back now and say, man, I wish I would have chosen to be what I really thought I would be when I was a kid, and that was a baseball player. I was blessed with great athletic ability, and I played baseball and football in college. Well, football in college because of the scholarship, so I had to give up baseball. And there was a point in my life where I wanted to be a coach, when I figured, well, I'm not going to be a professional athlete. But anyway, I'm just trying to give you an idea of where I come from, so you understand that I'm not trying to get you to believe anything. Just want you to understand that how I came to this and why I think it's important to research all this stuff. Well, I decided I was a dummy because I was just a jock in college, and I really didn't take it seriously. So I spent a couple of years in college getting a journalism degree, and I decided I was going to learn by writing. And I always had this ability to write. I don't know where it came from because I don't understand grammar still to this day, and never did. But as Mark Twain said, never let grammar or the truth stand in the way of a good story. And I think he understood what the mainstream was like even in his day when it came to never let truth stand in the way of a good story. However, as my journalism career began, it never ended once I started writing. And the idea of, and as looking back how naive I was, back at the beginning stages, the first story I wrote, I remember it. And I remember how I thought I could change the world. And this went on. I mean, I was as idealistic as anybody, always striving, let's get the truth behind these government idiots. And I was dealing with smaller issues, city issues, state issues. But as I progressed, that ability to be like a open-minded child, to learn things, to take in things, began to sour a bit, I guess would be the best way to explain it. And as the years went on, I realized how deeply these deceptions go. And when it finally arrived in Rome and I started researching to the depths of my religion and all of the belief systems I had, and I realized that something is wrong here. And so I took it piece by piece, every little piece by piece, until I've gotten to this point today where I do not believe one word that comes out of the mouth of the Vatican or the government. And there's reason for it. The reason is that the greatest deception of all has been put upon us. They have taken us and made us feel as if we're little ants on this spinning ball, when it isn't the case at all. We are important. We have a reason to be here, and it isn't to overthrow the government. It isn't, you see all this stuff they have on the news now, every fake shooting, The last one was in Louisiana, and the guy, they claim he was anti-government, and anybody anti-government now is going to go into a theater and shoot people. That's what they want you to believe. Now, the point is, nothing could be farther than the truth. In fact, the more I learn about this, at a certain point you reach it's like getting to the top of the mountain and realizing, you know what? You've seen the truth. You've seen everything, and it is not going to get better. And there's no sense in revolt. I, in fact, get a kick out of these people and enjoy listening to this kind of fantasy we live in, and don't want it to change. You know why? Because it won't change. And so why should I constantly have this thing in the back of my mind? If I keep understanding the truth, the more truth movements there are, the better it'll get. And we'll overthrow these people. It's not going to happen. In fact, I want them to continue. The faster they go, this is so good. Their story's getting so good that, and realizing you can't change them, that the only thing you can do is understand it. Now, in fact, any of these people that I would meet, I would shake their hand and say, you've done a great job. You've done a great job in your deception, and I know it's not going to change, so go on. Make yourself millions. Do what you want. I could care less about Hollywood. I get articles sent to me all the time. Robin Williams is Bono. Jim Morrison is either Rush Limbaugh or Chevy Chase. Bette Midler is actually somehow connected with Mama Cass. They never died. All this stuff. I don't care. Let them play these games all they want. It's not going to get better, folks. And once you understand this, you can actually open your mind and learn about it. And so this hoax, this complete hoax, and this idea that people that distrust their government, distrust their religion, are evil people, you have to understand it's just the opposite. But many of these people get caught up in their game of getting you to the point of becoming anti-government, anti-Vatican or whatever, and wanting to destroy them, get rid of them. And then they can just turn it around and say, listen, you're against God and government, and I told you these crazy people are all nuts and they go out killing people. It's nothing. That's what they want to do. They want to ensnare you. So what I'm trying to do is tell you that anti-government, anti-Vatican has nothing to do with violence. In fact, the last thing I want to do is see them go. And the reason is because they never will, as long as we're on this earth. It never will happen. And why? Well, you guys in the biblical arena figure that one out for yourselves. And then come back to me and tell me if I'm right or wrong. I'm not going to get into it. But all I'm trying to tell you is that my road has led me to this, and that's why I spend my time doing this story. Because to me, it's the ultimate deception. It's the ultimate in showing that nothing's going to ever get better on this earth. Now, how do you live with it? I think you live with it by understanding it, by not building up your expectations that anything's ever going to get better. And once you have enough information, then you can make your choice of whether you want to side with them, whether you want to join the Masonic Club, the Vatican Club, or whether you want to continue researching this stuff and understanding really what you live in, really what it's all about. But many people can't make that decision, so there's a lot of fake truth tellers out there. A lot of fake people, because they haven't taken, it's not, you can't really have freedom of free will or free choice unless you understand things, unless you give yourself an opportunity to not make a decision until you got all the facts. So a lot of these people out there say, well, I chose to be with this truth group, or I chose to be with the Vatican, have really not made a choice. They just took the easy way out. because it seems that way. Maybe, they felt, well, I've been screwed over by the government, so I'll join that group. Or I can make more money if I work with the Vatican in this area, or the government. But they really haven't made a choice because they just don't know everything until you really get to a point where you understand things. And that's up to you. I don't know what that point is for you. I know what it is for me. Then you have free will and a choice. And so that's why I do it. Because it's obvious to me that the only way out of this world is to understand it. And whether you're out of it in your own mind, that's probably the best way to be. And maybe out of your mind isn't such a bad thing to say. Now, let's go. And there's a guy who did a little video here, so I enjoy this. And I want to give you a little bit about the NASA hoax exposed and going into, he talks a little bit about the swimming pools that they use for the spacewalks, and I just thought you might enjoy this. And I'll tell you, go to the NASA Space Hoax Exposed. You can see this little, I don't know how long it is, 20 minutes. And I'll play it now for you, and we'll have some fun understanding how these guys, do all of these spacewalks in a swimming pool and other things on the Investigative Journal.
It's this Chinese spacewalk. A bubble rises in the pool. It's complete fraud. Here the helmet gets hit on the International Space Station, and a bubble rises into the pool.
Proceed this way.
Tossing some bullshit, and a bubble appears at 3:39 in this video. And it takes an odd trajectory because it's in a water pool. Houston, we have a problem. Space is broken. Sorry, U.S. government. I have to show them the bubble. There's the bubble in the pool that we just saw. Yep, doesn't even go in a straight line. It's in a water pool. Takes a very odd trajectory because the water is actually moving around. It's not still. And here on the International Space Station, they once even got caught with a scuba tank in space.
Which is the faking of spacewalks in a swimming pool. In this vid, you catch a glimpse of someone wearing a scuba tank. Scuba tanks in space?
NASA does literally nothing in space. It's all bullshit.
The video is sped up, so it looks more natural. But yeah, they're underwater, and the video is sped up, and they do this on the Hubble Space Telescope as well. So that's how you know the Hubble Space Telescope never existed in orbit. This is all bullshit. I need somebody to sing the Little Mermaid song Under the Sea. They're in a water tank. From a distance, can you tell? What's with all this atmospheric bullshit? What kind of camera is this? Do they make it look like they're underwater on purpose? They have two water tanks. They have the water tank that they train in, and then they have this water tank for the fraud. They never work in space. The International Space Station is complete bullshit. What's even more ridiculous about them filming spacewalks in a water pool, and spacewalks are impossible, is that the women for the hoax perm their hair. Here she's in front of a blue screen, and the background is not moving. The cable is completely still. And in real life, there would be airflow in the space station. The space station would be making adjustments that would not stay fixated. It's just a screenshot. And they just put it in the background. It's blue screen. And her hair is permed for this ridiculous hoax. This is a video that I made about the absurdity with their hairdos. They perm their hair. It's ridiculous. Their hair stays fixated. The public doesn't notice that their hair is permed. And yeah, the women are completely ridiculous on the space station.
One thing that gives away the International Space Station hoax is the women. They claim they can't shower and they take sponge baths. In real life, women would shave their heads. They would not go with hair like this if they could not shower. They just would not do this. Now, women on zero-G planes with long hair, their hair flows naturally in the air. And the women on the International Space Station, because this is all fraud, their hair is fixated the entire time. Why do they even have long hair to begin with? This woman's hair stays fixated in this position the entire time in her really long International Space Station video. No matter what she does, no matter how she bounces around, you would expect her hair to flow in the air, and it does not happen. It stays completely fixated like that. Now, the zero-G plane that they work in can be grounded for these pictures. She does not have to actually be working out, and you wouldn't be able to tell because she has her permed, fixated hair. It looks like she's still in space. When they are doing this fraud on the planes, you can hear the sounds of jet engines. They cannot filter out the sounds of jet engines with the specialized microphones that they use. You can notice it in the background. It's very loud. Here's iJustine. She has a vlog of her hair flows in the air, as it would, because the hair is moving through air. So it's going to flow as you bounce around. And on the International Space Station, this does not happen with the women. They do flips, they lay down, they do all kinds of things. They bounce from here to there. They pretend they're Superman. Their hair will never look like that because it's permed. This woman's hair stays fixated. I'm going to put a filter on this thing. She's going to sound like a chipmunk. It's going to be sped up. You're going to hear the sound of jet engines. You're going to see transitional periods where the plane has to gain its altitude again and drop all over again. So they do a transition like that one, and you think, oh, it's just editing. They're just shortening the video. No, this is for the fraud. Now she's in the zero-G environment again, so they can continue.
But you can sleep in any orientation. I have it sleeping, feeling like I'm standing up right now, but like you saw, I'm on the floor. But it doesn't matter. I've got a couple little toys. I've got some books. I've got some clothes. And other things. And just for reference, that's one sleep station. This one's another. All right, come on back. There's more to show you. Vegetables, cereals, bread, snacks. And that's a good place. That's where you find all the candy. Side dishes, and then some little power bars just in case. So we have all this type of food. Some of it is dehydrated. Going on barbecue and beef brisket. Pretty yummy. Not only is this food made in the U.S., but we also have food here from Japan. We're talking about it, so I got
You hear the jet engines in the back?
We have a lot of food up here. No problems. So just keep reminded of our roots.
Hello, I'm Sunny Williams. I'm up here on the International Space Station. Now, I'm going to say where we are. So right now, we're in the Japanese laboratory, and I was flying through space like this. My left hand would be where the Japanese laboratory. So I'm inside. It's sort of like a little phone booth, but it's pretty comfy. I've got a sleeping bag. And I sleep upside down. I can't have it. I don't have any sensation in my head that tells me that I'm.
And then I'm ready, primed up to go outside, as we call it, to go do a spacewalk in case we have to do anything outside. Some of the things we do outside are just like inside repairs.
We have a lot of electrical boxes and machinery and solar arrays. And here we are at the throne. This is awesome. You might see the little, you might have noticed the little moon on the outside. It serves for two functions. Number 2, right here. I'll show you. But you see it's pretty small, so you have to have pretty good aim, and you be ready to make sure things get let go the right direction. And it smells a little bit, so I'm closing it up. And that's, of course, for now.
This is really a joke. Something stinks, and it's not the fake toilet they're showing. This is amazing. When you start looking, it's impossible that we would believe this garbage. And that's really what it's amazing. You got to go to this video just to have some fun. The NASA space hoax exposed. There's many out there, but wouldn't it be nice if we could find out I think someone was doing a tracking where these swimming pools were, and where these astronauts, these people, go while they're doing. They're supposedly up there for a year, so they can't be shown. I guess they could wear fake wigs and stuff and things like that. But where do some people say there's a little NASA compound in Moscow, somewhere in Russia. So interesting. We should, now if journalists were really doing their job and weren't paid by the Masonic Vatican and all these people to hide the truth, we'd know all this stuff. But then they wouldn't be doing it to begin with. But that's why I say nothing is ever going to get better. I mean, if they've gone this far to tell us, to show us, and we believe this stuff, how do you think we're ever going to make any changes for the better in this world? It's not going to get better. And that's just a realist talking. It is better, though, that you understand that. That is the one beautiful thing about it. And we'll be back tomorrow with more on In Search of the Great Ice Wall on the Investigative Journal. Good night.